Hey everybody, welcome to the all-new CoreyEars-Sports on Kobu TV. TV for your world. I can't thank the good folks down at Kobu TV enough for their vision and support. I'm excited to see how we can grow together to bring you premium sports for free. Today we're going to be looking at the Olympic hockey gold medal games, 2 college basketball games that are showcasing the top 4 teams in the country, and a brief look at the defending national champion Florida Gators basketball team. Hope you enjoy. Now let's dive in. Let's take a look at Olympic hockey. On back-to-back nights in Milan, we had 2 finals, 2 emotional roller coasters, and 1 chapter in the greatest rivalry in hockey, as the U.S. and Canadian men's and women's teams both faced off with gold medals on the line. 2 matchups that felt like destiny meets deja vu. Let's start with the women's final. Whenever these 2 teams collide, the pace is ridiculous. The hits are heavy, and the stars shine bright like the night sky. Canada opened with their trademark physicality, trying to grind the U.S. down. Kristen O'Neill struck first for Canada with a shorthanded goal early in the second, and that goal really set the tone as physical, chippy, and exactly the type of game that Canada wanted. For a while, the U.S. looked lost trying to solve a Canadian defense that clogged the neutral zones and punished every mistake. But Team USA didn't panic. They leaned into their speed, tightened up their puck movement, and slowly started tilting the ice back in their favor. The U.S. finally broke through to tie it with 2:04 to go in regulation, as a shot by Layla Edwards was deflected to the back of the net by none other than the face of U.S. hockey, Hillary Knight. This was her 15th Olympic goal and the most ever by an American player. From that point, the game basically turned into a track meet, just back and forth end-to-end rushes, huge saves on both sides, and the overtime moment everyone will remember. It was the perfect combination of poise and positioning as Megan Keller in 3-on-3 sudden death overtime scored the golden goal. The bench exploded, the arena erupted, and the U.S. completed a come-from-behind win that felt as emotional as it was dramatic. In a rivalry defined by razor-thin margins, this one stands out. Canada brought the physicality, the U.S. brought the resilience, and the iconic 2-1 finish in another classic in the USA-Canada rivalry. Then came the men's final, and if the women's game was a thriller, this was a full-blown 1980s classic action reboot. Canada tried to set the tone early with a bruising forecheck, but the U.S. refused to get pushed around. If you were looking for a game that captured everything this rivalry stands for, the history, the hostility, the heartbreak, the 2026 men's gold medal final between the U.S. and Canada delivered a masterpiece. Just 6 minutes into the game, the U.S. struck first. Matt Boldy skated from the neutral zone, lifted the puck off the ice, backhanded it to a space that only he could get to, and pushed it past Jordan Bennington, beating him clean to give the U.S. a 1-0 lead. It was a statement goal. But Canada didn't rattle. They settled into their structure, slowed the game down, and turned the second period into a grind. And eventually, arguably, their most dangerous weapon broke through when Cale Makar took a feed in stride and ripped a shot to the back of the net to tie the game 1-1. It was classic Makar timing and a rocket of a release the goalies simply don't have time to track. From there, Canada controlled long stretches of the middle frame. Their forecheck got heavier, their cycles longer, and the U.S. found themselves absorbing pressure just shift after shift. But the Americans didn't break. Hellebuck held, their defensive coverage tightened, and they kept the game within reach. The third period was survival hockey. Canada generated the cleaner looks, but the U.S. countered with bursts of speed that reminded everyone how dangerous they can be in transition. Both teams had moments. A Canadian scramble that nearly crossed the line, a U.S. rush that forced a sprawling save, but neither side blinked, really. Regulation ended tied 1-1, exactly the way it felt it would. And then came 3-on-3 overtime. The first few minutes were unbelievable. Canada hit the post on a rush that could have ended it. The U.S. answered with a 2-on-1 that Bennington turned aside. Every possession felt like a breakaway waiting to happen. Dirty Florida Panther Sam Bennett's typical aggressive play resulted in high-sticking Jack Hughes in the mouth, leaving his teeth on the ice, but that's not the last time we'll hear Jack Hughes' name. Because shortly thereafter was the moment, the one that will live in Olympic highlight reels for decades. It's Jack Hughes playing defense on Connor McDavid. Hughes gets the puck, taps it to Werenski, who passes it back to Hughes, back to Werenski. At the far end of the ice, it's Werenski fighting off a defender. Back to Hughes for the one-timer past Bennington. The game winner, the golden goal. USA 2, Canada 1. The U.S. bench erupts with a dog pile. Helmets, gloves everywhere. A celebration worthy of the rivalry and the moment. This wasn't a game the Americans dominated. It was a game they survived and ultimately seized in a moment. Canada brought the structure. The U.S. brought the resiliency. After Nathan McKinnon hit the post on an open goal that should have ended it, Jack Hughes, off the perfect read from Werenski, delivered the play that separated the gold from the silver, the celebrations from the plushy tantrums of a 30-year-old man. Maybe next time, Nathan. So for those of you keeping score at home, that's 2 finals, 2 overtimes, and 2 American golden goals. Congrats to both the U.S. men's and women's teams. Now let's look at a huge day in college basketball with 2 matchups that include the top 4 teams in the country all facing off against each other. First, how about Arizona going into Houston and winning 73-66? And it wasn't just that Arizona won, it's where they won. They won in Houston. The Fertitta Center is a fortress. Houston was 122-7 in that building since it opened in 2018. They'd won 51 of their last 52 there. Teams don't walk in and take games from Houston at home. But Arizona just controlled the biggest moments of the game. And what made it even more impressive to me is that Arizona came in shorthanded. No Koa Pete, no Dwayne Astrode, and still, from the opening tip, they look like the more comfortable team. They moved the ball well. They spaced the floor. They didn't let Houston's physicality knock them off rhythm. Anthony Del Orso, who suddenly just decided he's going to become a star, set the tone early. And he was confident and played like a guy who knew Houston didn't have a matchup for him. Houston did what Houston always does. They slowed the game down. They locked down defensively. And they dragged the pace into that rock fight they love. And for a while there, it worked. The game stayed tight. The crowd was into it. And you could feel that classic Houston pressure starting to build up in the arena. The turning point came in the second half. Houston actually had a little momentum. And they had the crowd rolling. It felt like they were about to take control like they normally do. And then Arizona punched them in the jaw with a 12-0 run that completely changed the game. Houston missed 10 straight shots during that stretch. 10 straight shots. Arizona's defense locked in, obviously. Del Orso hit a massive 3. Krivas owned the paint. And Jaden Bradley knocked down a couple of tough mid-range shots that just sucked the air out of the building. That run took it from 50-48 Houston to 60-50 Arizona. And honestly, Houston never fully recovered. They made pushes, they always do, but they never fully got the game back under control. And then Del Orso, man, he was the best player on the floor. Back-to-back 22-point games, both in high-pressure environments. And he looked completely unfazed. This wasn't empty scoring. This was give me the ball and I'll get you a bucket scoring. And that's the kind of thing that changes a team's ceiling in March. I mean, just look at my beloved Florida Gators with Walter Clayton Jr. during their run to the championship last year. Defensively, Arizona deserves a lot of credit. They held Houston to 66 points in that building with that crowd against that team. They forced late clock possessions. They controlled the glass when it mattered most, and they completely shut down Houston during that decisive run. You just don't do that on the road in Houston unless you are a legit basketball team. And here's where the March implications come in. Arizona now sits alone at the top of the Big 12. They've got the head-to-head over Houston. They've stabilized a little bit after their mid-season wobble. And with this win, they're absolutely back in the number 1 seed conversation. Not fringe, not maybe. They're right in the thick of things. Houston, on the other hand, takes a big hit back-to-back losses, including one at home, and suddenly that number 1 seed line is a lot more crowded. They're still elite. Nobody's questioning that. But the margin they had is now gone. And honestly, this game felt like a preview. This felt like something we could see again in an Elite 8 or Final 4 game. 2 top 5 teams, 2 elite defenses, 2 coaches who know exactly how to win in March. The intensity, the physicality, the adjustments, it all felt like a tournament game. But the biggest takeaway is this. Arizona walked into this building where almost no one wins, missing 2 rotation players, and they took control of the game when it mattered most. Their defense was elite. Their stars showed up. Del Orso just had his national coming out party. And this wasn't just a win. This was a resume changer. This was a seeding changer. This was a circle this when the bracket comes out kind of game. And if Arizona ends up on that number 1 line in a few weeks, we're all going to look back at this afternoon in Houston as the moment that made it possible. All right, now let's take a look at this Michigan at Duke game. Number 1 on the road facing number 3 Duke. This one had a little bit of everything from momentum swings, coaching adjustments, big-time shot making, and some real March implications for both teams. And honestly, it felt like one of those games where you learn more about how a team wins. Michigan came out looking like a team that understood the assignment. They were physical, they were connected defensively, and they weren't intimidated by Duke's mystique at all. You could tell early that they were going to attack Duke's guards, force switches, and make Duke defend in space. And guess what? It worked. Michigan got downhill, they got to the rim, and for the most part, they controlled the tempo in the first 10 minutes. But Duke, to their credit, didn't panic. They settled in, and they started getting the ball where they wanted it, inside. Once they got their bigs touches, the whole offense opened up. They started getting cleaner looks, they started getting second chance points, and the game flipped from Michigan dictating the pace to Duke just playing their style. The first half felt like a tug of war. Michigan would make a run, Duke would answer. Duke would get momentum, Michigan would punch right back. And that's what made the second half so interesting, because it became a game of adjustments. Michigan came out of the locker room with a clear plan. Speed the game up, force Duke's guards to defend them in transition, and make them uncomfortable. And for a stretch, it worked beautifully. Michigan hit a couple threes, forced a turnover or 2, and suddenly Duke was on its heels. But once again, Duke showed their maturity. They didn't let the game get away from them. They slowed things down, they got back to their sets, and they leaned on their stars to settle everything down. Once they did that, the game shifted again. Duke started getting stops. They started winning the 50-50 balls. They started stacking good possessions together to the point that the final 8 minutes felt like March basketball. Both teams had stretches where it looked like they were about to take control. Michigan hit a couple big shots to stay alive, but Duke's execution down the stretch was the difference. They got the ball to their playmakers, they trusted their sets, and they made Michigan defend for a full 30 seconds each trip down the court. And that is what won Duke the game, 68-63. It wasn't a crazy run, not a flurry of threes, just disciplined late game execution. That is the type of basketball that wins in March. But let's talk about March, because this game actually moved the needle for both teams quite a bit. For Duke, this is the kind of win that stabilizes your resume. It's not just a quality win, it's a we can win a tournament style game against a physical, disciplined opponent win. And that matters. Duke has had moments this season where they looked young, where they've looked inconsistent, inexperienced, where they've looked like they're still figuring out who they are, really. But in this one, they looked like a team that understands how to win in March, like I said. For Michigan, on the other hand, this isn't a bad loss, but it is a big missed opportunity. They played well enough to win. They had stretches where they controlled the game, and they showed they can hang with a top-tier opponent. But at some point, you've got to stack wins. You've got to close big games. And that's the difference between being a dangerous 7 seed and being a team that actually scares people in the second weekend of March. The good news from Michigan is their play style also travels well in March. They're built to make life miserable for other teams. But they just have to find that late game closer who says, give me the ball and I'll give us a bucket, just like the other game had. Because in March, that's the separator. That is the ultimate decider, if you will. But overall, these two games felt like previews of what we could see in March. Teams that can defend, grind, and win ugly. All 4 of these teams have shown they can play with anybody, and they all walk away knowing they're going to matter when the bracket drops in about 2 weeks. All right, let's talk the Florida Gators, because this defending national championship squad has taken me on quite the emotional roller coaster this season. But honestly, it's starting to feel like they're putting it together for another deep March run. To really appreciate where they are now, you've got to remember how this season started. Florida opened the year in Las Vegas, dropping one by 6 points to Arizona, which not exactly a tune-up game. And about a month later, they hit a brutal stretch with a 1-point loss at Cameron Indoor to Duke. And then the next night, a 4-point loss to UConn at Madison Square Garden. Those 3 games I wouldn't say are exactly neutral site games against the now top 2 and 6th ranked teams in the country. 3 losses, all to national powers, all by 2 possessions or less. And that's not a team getting exposed. That's a team getting thrown into the fire early, which Todd Golden likes to do to his teams, so they are battle tested when it counts come March. But then again, that turbulence didn't stop there. They had 2 other close losses to TCU and Missouri, and then just out of nowhere came the real speed bump that was a 9-point loss at home to Auburn that absolutely nobody saw coming. I definitely didn't. But then again, it just seemed like one of those games where nothing clicked, nothing made sense, and you just move on. But honestly, that might have been the turning point. That might have been the one that truly lit the fire under this team. They've won 7 straight, and 12 of their last 13, including that Auburn game, and they're doing it with a level of confidence that just wasn't there at the beginning of January. A huge part of that transformation has been the front court. Thomas Houck has really taken a leap, leading this team in scoring at just over 17 points per game. He's become that steady, reliable bucket getter that you can trust in any situation. And when you pair him with Alex Condon and Ruben Chinyelu, Florida's starting bigs are giving them 43 points and 26 rebounds a night. That consistently overwhelming front court production wins games. And now Florida isn't just winning. They're dominating on the road especially. They just set the record for 4 straight conference road games, each by 19 points or more. Let me say that again because it's wild. The Gators became the only power conference team since 1996-97 to win 4 consecutive conference road games by at least 19 points. That's an impressive run, and they haven't slowed down since. What I love about this group is how they're winning. They defend, they rebound, they get downhill. They don't rely on one guy to have 30 points a night. It's connected, sustainable basketball, the kind that, like I say, can hold up in March without a Walter Clayton Jr. per se. Now, with just a few games left before the conference tournament, Florida's sitting in first place in the SEC with a 2-game lead. They've now found a way to be closer to what we saw last year at this time. A group that's peaking at the right time and looking like a team that no one wants to see on their side of the bracket. And look, repeating as national champions is one of, obviously, the most difficult things to do in college basketball. Florida and UConn are the only teams to do it since Duke did it back in 1991-92. The pressure, the target on your back, the roster turnover is brutal. But Florida has something most teams don't: experience in the chaos that is March Madness. They've been through the fire. Do they have a realistic shot at repeating? Absolutely. They're a legitimate contender again. The numbers and the eye test don't lie. So as we head into the final stretch, the Gators aren't just defending a title. They're reminding everyone why they won in the first place. And if they keep playing like this, we might just be talking about back-to-back champions in Gainesville again. As always, go Gators. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's program on U.S. and Canadian hockey, the 4 top-ranked college basketball teams, and the defending national champion Florida Gators. This has been a presentation of Corey Ears Sports on Kobu TV. Real people, real stories.